油断してるとやられちまうかもな。頼むぜみんな。
Transcendent Crystals is one of my favorite skills in Duel Links. One of the reasons for that is that it helps CrystalBeast out tremendously, especially considering the way Duel Links is formatted, where you can only have 3 spawn trap cards, which makes it pretty difficult for them to function normally. But on top of being useful for CrystalBeast, they've also been pretty useful for other decks as well, as we'll see in this CrystalBeast X Invoker deck. So you're going to run 3 copies of Alistair the Invoker. This is going to allow you to search out Invocation whenever he's summoned, and you can use him to fuse with your CrystalBeast. You're also going to run 3 copies of CrystalBeast Amber Mammoth, as well as 3 copies of CrystalBeast Emerald Tortoise. These allow you to go into Magdalenica and Coactus respectively, and you can also use them with Transcendent Crystals in order to play them on the field, which allows you to combo into other cards. Volcanic Shell, you're going to run 3 of these. This works with Transcendent Crystals as well, as you can discard them, add another one to your hand, so they're fodder for Transcendent Crystals, and it also allows you to summon Purgatrio, so you can use this with Alistair as well. You're going to run here 3 copies of Invocation. You can maybe run 2 and then maybe add in a different card, but I run 3 even though I have 3 copies of Alistair, even though he searches them out anyways. And you're going to run here 2 copies of Rare Value. You really can't run 3 copies. I don't think you'll ever even be able to play more than 2 most of the times. You'll probably only be able to play 1 of them, but it allows you to have some draw power in your deck, which is pretty great. It also allows you to send your CrystalBeast to the graveyard in your same turn. If, for example, you had to discard both Volcanic Shells or an Alistair or an Invocation or something like that in order to trigger Translucent Crystals or Transcendent Crystals. And obviously drawing 2 cards is pretty dope. And then finally we're going to run here 3 copies of Crystal Raigeki to just clear the field of some monsters or some traps or spells or anything like that, so you can go ahead and wreak havoc. For your main deck monsters, or for your extra deck monsters I should say, you're going to run 3 copies of Purgatrio, who's going to be your main beater in this deck. And you're also going to run 1, or rather 2 copies of Magdalenica here, because it's going to be a big fat monster that you can bring out with your Amber Mammoth, which is going to allow you to do a lot of damage with his massive attack stat. And finally, 1 single copy of Coactus, which is fine right now. As of recording this, he's only limited to 1, but I don't really think you really need more than 1. Purgatrio kind of does all the work for you. Coactus is kind of just there to protect you and deal a little bit of extra damage. But that's the deck. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I was thinking of maybe taking out a copy of Invocation and maybe putting in like Guardian Yatos or something like that, just because I've noticed a lot that I managed to remove all my monsters from the graveyard pretty quickly and end up with no monsters. That might be a possible card you can add in. But in any case, stay fresh. So it's a little bit hard for me to actually find decent duels using this deck because I haven't played ranked in a long time, so I managed to get bumped down all the way to silver, and people play a lot of really weird decks in silver rank. But in any case, this duel was pretty easy. I managed to use Transcendent Crystals immediately, and I managed to dip my Volcanic Shell, which allowed me to use this effect to get another Volcanic Shell from my deck, which makes my deck a lot thinner. So when I go and I use Rare Value, I get a little bit more value out of that as well, especially after, you know, Alistair adding Invocation to my hand. But in addition to that, I also managed to dip Emerald Tortoise first turn, which allows me to get a Coactus first turn on the field, as well as 2 of the CrystalBeasts on the field. And then thankfully thanks to Invocation, I managed to get Alistair back to my hand, which allows me to summon him next turn to play yet another copy of Invocation here to remove this copy of Alistair that I have on the field and the Volcanic Shell in the graveyard to allow me to bring out Purgatrio here. You can see here, this is why I was considering maybe getting, or rather putting in a copy of Guardian Yatos into this deck, because I tend to just remove all my monsters from the graveyard or use Invocation's effect to bring them back to the deck, specific. But you can see here my opponent is dumb, I guess, and doesn't know Purgatrio's effect. He goes ahead and summons another monster to the field, which allows me to attack again. And then he decides, even after that, to bring back another monster to the field. This time at least in defense mode, but it doesn't make a difference because I do piercing damage and I get a plus attack for each monster on his side of the field, and I get to attack all of his monsters. So I got 3 attacks in for really no reason, and yeah, he probably would have been okay if he had just not done that, but now he took an extra bit of damage here, and then he's just like, well, shit, I'm gonna set and surrender. So, yeah. This duel is a little bit different from the last one. Rather than getting Coactus first turn, I managed to dip my Volcanic Shell to get a Tortoise on the field. Then I can use my Shell's effect to add a shell from my deck to my hand after paying 500 life points. Afterwards, I'm allowed to set that same cell face down along with my Crystal Raigeki. I was about to say Raigeki Break, but that's a completely different card. My opponent here does some interesting move where he manages to set Yami. I don't know anyone that actually plays Yami straight from their deck, but he manages to play that along with this chicken here, along with a card face down in defense mode and 2 cards in his back row. In any case, for my turn I draw and activate Crystal Raigeki here, which allows me to destroy my Emerald Turtles and destroy what was apparently Jar of Greed face down. So he's able to activate its effect, chaining it to the destruction to draw 1 card anyways, but I'm able to use my last copy of Volcanic Shell, or rather use my copy of Volcanic Shell to get my last copy of Volcanic Shell, which I can then use with translucent crystals, or transcending crystals, to dip Alistair and Volcanic Shell, and use Rare Value to draw 2 cards after that, which unfortunately gives me a hand full of Invocations, which is actually not all that bad, because I'm able to use one of those copies of Invocation to remove the Tortoise that I discarded or used for Crystal Raigeki in order to summon a Quacktus onto the field, and then use Invocation's effect in order to summon, or rather to bring back my Alistair from the removal play back to my hand, which I can then use again with my second copy of Invocation in order to summon Purgatrio here, who has a big hefty 3,300 attack here, and he manages to go through this little chicken really easily, and then following up with that, he can go through this thing really easily, and them's the breaks. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the deck in the description down below. It's a pretty solid deck. I don't know how well it does meta-wise, but I think it flows pretty consistently, but I can imagine it would have some issues. In any case, take care of yourself.